Imagine standing on a beach when the ocean suddenly begins moving the wrong way. The water pulls away from the shore. Boats settle onto exposed sand. Fish flop where waves were breaking only moments ago. It looks as if someone has pulled the plug from the sea. Now imagine that this is only one of the ocean's impossible tricks. In other places, the water glows white for thousands of square kilometers. Waves appear from nowhere as tall as buildings. Lakes form at the bottom of the sea, and the largest waterfall on Earth remains completely invisible beneath the surface. The ocean covers most of our planet, yet some of its strangest behavior still looks less like nature and more like a broken physics simulation. These are 7 ocean phenomena that look completely impossible. Number 7. Brine Pools. Deep in the Gulf of Mexico, a submarine can cross an ordinary-looking seafloor and suddenly arrive at the edge of a lake. There is a shoreline. There are ripples. The surface reflects light. Animals gather around the border. But this lake is already underwater. Brine pools form when extremely salty water collects in depressions on the seafloor. Salt makes the brine much denser than normal seawater, so the 2 layers resist mixing. The heavy liquid sinks, spreads, and settles into a pool with a visible boundary. To a remotely operated vehicle, it can look like a pond from another planet. The machine may even create waves as it brushes the surface. But entering the pool can be dangerous. Many brine pools contain very little oxygen and may be rich in toxic chemicals such as hydrogen sulfide or methane. Fish and other animals that fall inside can become stunned or die. Their bodies may remain unusually well preserved because the hostile water supports few scavengers. That is why some researchers and explorers have given these places names such as underwater death pools. Yet the edge can be full of life. Mussels, tube worms, crabs, and bacteria survive by using chemicals rising from the seafloor. So the same pool can be lethal in the middle and crowded around the shore. It is a lake with no sky, a shoreline beneath thousands of feet of water, and an ecosystem built around poison. Number 6. Milky Seas. For centuries, sailors reported nights when the ocean turned completely white. Not blue sparks around a ship, not glowing waves that flashed and vanished. They described a steady pale light stretching all the way to the horizon, as if the vessel were sailing through snow or clouds. The stories sounded like maritime folklore. Then satellites began seeing the same thing. In 1995, the crew of the SS Lima crossed a glowing area off Somalia for hours. Years later, researchers found the feature in satellite records. It covered roughly 15,000 square kilometers. Scientists believe Milky Seas are created by enormous populations of luminous bacteria, possibly living with algae or feeding on stressed organic material. Unlike the quick flashes created by many forms of plankton, these bacteria can produce a continuous glow for days or even weeks. In 2019, a satellite detected an event south of Java that eventually covered about 100,000 square kilometers, an area roughly the size of Iceland. It persisted across 2 lunar cycles, and that is what makes a Milky Sea so unsettling. A normal bioluminescent wave reacts when it is disturbed. A Milky Sea can remain quietly illuminated even when a ship cuts through it. The wake does not switch the light on. The entire ocean is already glowing. Most events happen far from shipping lanes, and only one has been directly sampled by a scientific vessel. We can now see some of them from space, but the exact combination of bacteria, food, currents, and weather that creates them is still not fully understood. Number 5. The Vanishing Sea. On December 26, 2004, people on beaches around the Indian Ocean watched the water retreat far beyond its normal limit. In some places, the exposed seabed attracted curious visitors. Fish were left behind. Boats leaned onto the sand. The strange sight seemed harmless, even fascinating. It was actually one of the clearest natural warnings the ocean can give. A tsunami is not simply one giant breaking wave. It is a series of waves created when a huge amount of water is displaced, often by an undersea earthquake. If the trough of the first wave reaches land before its crest, the shoreline can drain outward. The sea appears to vanish because water is being pulled into the approaching wave system. The farther it retreats, the more terrifying the return may be. Minutes later, the water can rush inland like a rapidly rising, debris-filled tide. It may not resemble the neat curling wall shown in movies. It can arrive as a violent surge that keeps climbing and does not stop. The 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami killed more than 200,000 people across multiple countries. Some survivors recognized the warning and ran. On the island of Simulu, generations had passed down a lesson. After strong shaking, if the sea withdraws, move uphill immediately. The phenomenon looks impossible because coastlines are supposed to define where the ocean ends. During a tsunami, that boundary can move hundreds of meters in one direction and then charge back in the other. If the ground shakes near a coast, or the ocean suddenly falls or rises, the correct response is not to investigate, it is to reach high ground. Number 4. Old Sow. Between Maine and New Brunswick, enormous tides squeeze through narrow passages around islands, trenches, and underwater mountains. Where several currents collide, the ocean begins to rotate. The result is Old Sow, the largest whirlpool in the Western Hemisphere. It can grow more than 76 meters across, roughly the length of a soccer field. Smaller whirlpools spin nearby and are nicknamed piglets. Old Sow is not a permanent cartoon funnel with a hole in the center. Its shape changes with the tide. Sometimes it appears as broad, rotating water. At other times, vessels encounter standing waves, violent turbulence, and sudden drops. Small boats have reportedly struggled near a depression more than 3 meters deep. The mechanism is a perfect underwater traffic jam. Incoming tide flows from the Bay of Fundy into a confined channel. The current makes a sharp turn, passes a deep trench and an underwater mountain, and meets countercurrents. Part of the flow pinches off and spins. The whirlpool can even make a low sucking or grunting sound. One explanation for the name Old Sow is that sailors thought it sounded like a pig eating. Despite its violent appearance, the rotation also lifts cold, nutrient-rich water toward the surface. Fish and seabirds benefit from the food it carries upward. So this giant moving trap is also a feeding machine, built and dismantled by the tide every day. Number 3. Rogue waves. For centuries, sailors returned with stories about walls of water rising from an otherwise manageable sea. Scientists often treated those accounts like exaggerations. Ocean waves followed statistical patterns, and a wave twice as tall as everything around it seemed too unlikely to matter. Then instruments recorded one. On New Year's Day in 1995, the Draupner oil platform in the North Sea measured a wave nearly 26 meters high. The surrounding waves were much smaller. The reading helped prove that the monsters from sailors' stories were real. A rogue wave is generally more than twice the significant height of the surrounding waves. It can form when wave systems cross, when strong currents run against the direction of waves, or when energy briefly focuses into one enormous crest. They are dangerous not only because of height. Rogue waves can be extremely steep, with a deep trough in front of them. A ship may drop downward and then face what looks like a vertical wall. The force can smash windows, bend steel, and flood decks designed to survive ordinary storms. In 2020, a buoy near Vancouver Island recorded a 17.6-meter wave in seas with a significant height of about 6 meters. Relative to the surrounding water, it was one of the most extreme rogue waves ever measured. The ocean does not need to remain violent for hours to create one. Energy can align for only a few moments, build a wave that seems to come from nowhere, and then disappear back into ordinary chaos. Number 2. Black smokers. At the bottom of the ocean, chimneys release dark clouds into water that is almost freezing. The fluid leaving some of these structures can exceed 340 degrees Celsius. At certain vents it approaches 400, yet it does not erupt into ordinary boiling steam. The pressure of kilometers of seawater keeps it liquid. Black smokers form near volcanic regions and plate boundaries. Cold seawater slips through cracks in the crust, travels toward hot rock and magma, and becomes heated and chemically altered. It dissolves metals and minerals before rising back through the seafloor. When that superheated fluid hits cold ocean water, minerals suddenly solidify into tiny particles. The cloud looks like smoke, but it is closer to a storm of newly formed rock. Over time, the particles build tall chimneys around the opening. When scientists discovered hydrothermal vents near the Galapagos in 1977, the biggest surprise was not the heat, it was the life. These places existed in darkness, far beyond the energy of sunlight, yet they were surrounded by giant tube worms, clams, crabs, and microbes. The ecosystem was powered by chemosynthesis. Instead of using sunlight, bacteria used chemical energy from compounds released by the vents. That discovery changed ideas about where life could exist. A place that looked like a toxic underwater factory was supporting a community with no direct dependence on the sun. Black smokers combine water hotter than an oven, crushing pressure, metallic clouds, and animals living around what appears to be an underwater volcano chimney. Number 1. The Denmark Strait Cataract. The tallest waterfall on land drops less than 1 kilometer. The largest waterfall on Earth falls more than 3 kilometers, and nobody can stand beside it. It lies beneath the Denmark Strait, between Greenland and Iceland. Cold water flowing south from the Nordic Seas meets warmer water from the Irminger Sea. Because cold water is denser, it sinks beneath the warm layer and pours over an enormous ridge on the ocean floor. The hidden cataract begins hundreds of meters below the surface and plunges toward depths near 3,000 meters. Estimates place its downward flow above 3.5 million cubic meters every second. That is vastly more water than any land waterfall. But from a ship above it, the sea may look completely normal. There is no visible cliff edge, no white spray, no thunder that tourists can hear. The entire waterfall exists inside the ocean because one mass of water is heavier than another. This flow is also part of the planet's global ocean circulation. Cold, deep water moves south, while warmer water travels north, transporting heat, nutrients, carbon, and oxygen around the world. The invisible waterfall helps drive a system that influences climate far beyond the narrow strait where it begins. The strangest ocean phenomena are not exceptions to physics. They are physics operating at a scale our instincts were never built to understand. Salt creates lakes inside the sea. Bacteria turn the horizon white. Moving water exposes the ocean floor before disaster. Tides build whirlpools. Waves briefly combine into monsters. Pressure keeps scorching water liquid. And differences in temperature create a waterfall hidden inside another body of water. The ocean does not break the rules. It reveals how incomplete our everyday version of those rules really is. Which ocean phenomenon did you find the most unbelievable? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video, leave a like and subscribe for more entertaining videos about strange history, bizarre science, psychology, mysteries, and unbelievable true stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.